So you didn't see the edge of the world?
No, there's another myth. There's no such thing as the ice wall. That's misinterpreted as the ice shelf. From a boat level, looking at it, it would look like a wall. A piece of ice that had broke off from the shelf with a flat top to it. So it was about the size of the Merchandise Mart in Chicago.
Damn, just a piece of it was outside.
Just a piece of it, yep.
All right, guys. Fellow tall person here today, Brad Olsen. How's it going?
Hey, Sean, it's going good. Thanks for having me on.
The only person I met that's been in Antarctica.
And 2 inches taller than you.
Yeah, that doesn't happen often either.
But you fit in the Mercedes-Benz that I got from the Conscious Award and Billy Carson's last summer. And we just went out there and you said, this is the only car of this size that fits me.
Shout out to Billy, because people probably thought it was rigged when they saw you win that.
No, it was real. He's a man of his word. And
yeah, that's cool, though.
Kudos to him.
Yeah, Antarctica, man. Let's start there.
Yeah, so this time, about 6 years ago, I was just getting ready to fly down to South America. And I bought a Ford Expedition that had fully built out with a bed, a kitchenette, a refrigerator. My girlfriend and I picked it up in Santiago, Chile. We had to ride all the way up to Peru to meet with Brian Forrester and Nassim Harriman and Adam Apala in a trip we did through the Sacred Valley of Peru, seeing all the petroglyphs there, which, by the way, is the highest concentration of megaliths on the planet. Wow. They're just everywhere, up on a hillside, in the valley, on a road going to another site, almost so you don't even blink an eye after a while. There's so many. Then we concluded the trip at Lake Titicaca with the group, and then Emily and Infinity and I drove through Bolivia and then all the way through Argentina down to Ushuaia, which is the southernmost city in the world. There is where over 90% of all the boat traffic for Antarctica leaves. So weren't sure if we're going to get on a cruise ship or get on a sailboat. As fate would have it, we were getting there around the Christmas holiday and going into a travel agent without a reservation or a ticket saying, no, we don't have anything till February. And we were flying out in Feb. So it was one last travel agent with a woman we met before who was really nice to us and said, have you tried over in the sailboat yacht harbor and ask around for passage to Antarctica? Said, no, where's that? And so right there in the middle of town is where all the cruise ships come in. It's quite a busy area. You go through customs there and everything. But another 2 or 3 miles away was where all the sailboats were. And so we went there and met one guy who had a single passage. That wouldn't work for a couple. But he said, walk over 2 boats. There's a captain that has space for 2. And it was even a better boat, well built with a air compartment up front, which gives you a little peace of mind sailing to Antarctica over the Drake Passage, stormiest seas of the world. And we certainly felt that effect once we got on the Drake.
Wow.
That's how we got down there in a 70-foot, 2-foot sailboat for 26 days.
26 days.
Total trip.
Whoa.
15 full days in Antarctica. But it took us 4 days to get down there and then 6 days to get back.
Damn, that's a long trip.
It was a long trip, but you need it. It's a whole different continent down there, and it's the most remote piece of land on the planet, and it's 99% frozen ice, and it's like nothing you've ever seen before, Sean. It's really, you're going to a different world down there.
Wow.
There's no trees, there's no bushes. You don't even really see brown or mud or anything. It's just black and blue and white.
Damn, was there any life at all?
Oh, yeah. Well, the life is all below the water, and it's quite abundant. There were seals that are mostly black with white underbellies. Whales, of course, black with white underbellies.
Wow.
The black of the mountain, the white of the clouds, and the white of the snow, and then the blue of the ocean and the blue of the sky. We also saw, of course, quite a few penguins and penguin colonies, different species as well, 3 different distinct species of penguin.
Now, going into that trip, you probably heard a lot of conspiracy theories.
Yeah, I do. And part of the reason I went down there, Sean, is as far as I know, I'm the first researcher to go down there with the expressed interest to get to the bottom of a lot of these mysteries that we hear so much about. And to a degree, I was successful, but the questions I was asking, I did not find information. And
Really?
that was, do you know of any pyramids poking through the ice, antediluvian civilization? How about the 3 motherships, Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria, which the intelligence agencies named in the 1970s? It was routinely no to all the bases we went to, as well as the sea captains who do trips to Antarctica every year, but mostly to the Palmer Peninsula where we went. It is sort of a tourist corridor, you could say, because when we were down there, we saw other sailboats and other cruise ships.
Interesting. Why do you think certain countries don't want their citizens going there?
I don't know if that's necessarily true. With a certain amount of money, you can. I don't think it's citizen specific.
Okay, so that's a myth.
Yeah, it pretty much is.
Because I've seen these conspiracy theories where they say the governments don't want their people going there.
I don't think that's really true. At least to this part where I was going through a few hundred miles along the Palmer Peninsula. That's the finger that sticks out of Antarctica, and then the tip of South America comes down. That's the closest connection between a continent and Antarctica. So needless to say, most plane and boat traffic go through that southern tip region of South America.
Got it. So you didn't see the edge of the world?
No, there's another myth. There's no such thing as the ice wall. That's misinterpreted as the ice shelf, which is definitely there. And from a boat level, looking at it, it would look like a wall. In fact, the first thing we saw coming in on our sailboat, Sean, was a piece of ice that had broke off from the shelf with a flat top to it. It was enormous. It was about the size of the Merchandise Mart in Chicago. If you know, that building is one of the biggest buildings in the world.
Damn, just a piece of it was outside.
Just a piece of it, yep.
So that shelf is actually pretty big then.
Yeah, there's several shelves. The Ross Ice Shelf.
I wonder what caused that shelf to form.
So it's basically glaciers. Glaciers are water in slow motion. So they'll get deposited in snow and then slowly become a glacier, which then through gravity flows down from the mountain ranges in Antarctica. It eventually meets up at sea level, but because the water is sub-freezing, the ice as a glacier then becomes an ice shelf and can go for hundreds of miles. They're really quite remarkable. And underneath there are these fish that are unique only to Antarctica, called the ice fish, that only live in sub-freezing temperatures. And there's millions of them. In fact, they're kind of like the anchor species because they feed the seals, they feed the penguins, and then the plankton that comes up from the upwelling of the ocean, the warm water, meets the cold fresh water coming off of Antarctica and just creates this perfect environment for life underneath the sea.
Wow. So those fish might be prehistoric. They might be pretty ancient.
They're pretty old. I understand they're related to herring, but they have adapted so much to the environment that they're basically translucent fish with clear blood and no hemoglobin.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they have...
Did you eat one?
I didn't. I just met a researcher who was at one of the Argentinian bases, and we had a chance to talk to him the longest for almost an hour. He told us all about studying the ice fish. And when I was asking about, do you see anything paranormal, know anything about this? He looked at his partner and she kind of said, don't tell him. And then we knew we had to get it out of him. She eventually left, and then Emily and I just kind of grilled together. Like, why didn't she want you to say anything? What was it you saw? Finally got it out of him that at another Argentinian base called Belgrano 2, they had just had a UFO sighting only a couple weeks prior.
Whoa.
And all the bases were talking about it, and that's why the other woman wasn't sure she could tell us.
Damn, so there's UFOs all the way out there in Argentina, huh?
Well, so this would have been on the Palmer Peninsula in Antarctica. It was an Argentinian base run by them. Really, no one lives down there. Only now there's 100 people on the whole continent. Or I mean, 1,000 people. Only a dozen people or so per base that stays over. Most of the bases are actually seasonal, and the seasonal start in November next month and go till early March, and then you got to get out of there because it's pretty darn cold.
So do you think that was a UFO or a USO? Because we were talking before about how there's
underwater submersible objects. The best I could get out of the guy is that someone in the base saw a disc and orbs flying over. They didn't say to us that they saw them go into the water.
Got it.
But that is a characteristic of some craft, even down in Antarctica, that was part of Operation High Jump, when it was really a mission to retrieve Nazi backward engineered craft, which Admiral Byrd called Flugelrods, from his flight into the hole in the ice, according to his diary. But during the Battle of High Jump, which was really a one-day, one-sided affair, after they tried to bomb Base 211, up out of the water comes unidentified submersible objects, USOs, and in a show of force, they used a laser weapon to slice one of the ships in half, the USS Murdoch.
Whoa.
With great loss of life. But that was enough warning to tell Admiral Byrd, A, you can't shoot us down, which they couldn't, and B, we can take out the whole fleet if we want to, so you better get out of here. And so he cut his trip off 2 months into the 6-month expedition. On the way back, he gave an interview to a journalist from El Mercurio, and Admiral Byrd stated the following curious words, that we would be confronted with an enemy that has the ability to fly pole to pole at incredible speeds. So that's probably the Flugelrod or USO that they experienced during High Jump.
Wow. I never heard that story.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Yeah, because you explored these Nazi bases, right?
That's where I want to go back to with a film crew. And we have a venture capitalist who's actually talking to Brandon Frugel right now, who owns the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah and does the Mysteries of Skinwalker show.
Nice.
He's looking at our project. So all we need to do is get some funding and go down there. But in my talks with Linda Moulton Howe and even Dr. Michael Sala, who are both Antarctica researchers, but especially Linda, who has the whistleblower Brian S., who I'm trying to have a one-on-one conversation with. But Linda talked to him about the project. He's interested, but him and Linda both think you're not getting past the 3-letter agencies, at least not to go to some of those sensitive sites.
Yeah.
So maybe we can go down as tourists with our cameras and just do it that way. But otherwise, there are areas they don't want you to go to, and that's part of the mystery of Antarctica.
Damn. So these 3-letter agencies have that much jurisdiction in other parts of the world? They could just block you from going?
So it is the National Science Foundation that is the umbrella agency that runs the show down in Antarctica. And so they basically hire all the subcontractors who work on the bases, and they basically pay the bills through our taxpayer dollars.
Wow.
But there is the presence of the NSA down there. You know, remember the No Such Agency? That has a building at McMurdo, an unmarked building. It's the best kept secret that everybody knows, that the NSA operate out of there, and they're occasionally seen at the South Pole. Well, what are you doing there? The NSA was set up around the time of the CIA to basically cover everything extraterrestrial, paranormal, or give cover to perhaps an extraterrestrial base. And that is what Admiral Byrd says he discovered when he flew his plane the second time to the South Pole. Must have seen the hole on his first flight, where he was the first aviator to fly over South Pole. Came back at the beginning of High Jump in late 46 and flew out there just with a radio man. His radio went offline for 3 hours. They thought he crashed and he died. But he, in his diary, describes going down into the hole, which is several miles across. You could easily take a plane down there, and seeing a verdant green valley, which should not exist in Antarctica, and even megaflora and megafauna, including what him and his radio man identified as a woolly mammoth, extinct species. Well, some people say it's a fake diary, but there are other whistleblowers like Brian S. and Tazinski, a Russian who got KGB documents, who confirm there definitely is a hole in the ice about 50 miles from South Pole. So my critic out there who likes to say that I talk about the no-fly zone as being cover for the hole in the ice, he says, and it's on a map, that you cannot go lower or higher than 8,000 feet. You have to fly over 8,000 feet. But what intercontinental flight is going over the South Pole? If you know your geography, it's the farthest place from anywhere.
Yeah.
So you have to come down and land at South Pole, no matter what you're doing or where you're going.
You'll run out
to
of gas,
refuel.
right? Yeah.
That's right. So there is this big mystery about what's over the horizon. And let's face it, if you and I were working at the pole, just a menial job or even a technology job, it doesn't mean we're going to get top secret access and have knowledge about what's over the range. I mean, look right here, Sean, you live 1 or 2 mountain ranges from Area 51.
Yeah.
Do you know what's going on over there?
Hell no.
No, nobody does, because they're not going to tell you. And they wouldn't tell you what's going on in South America either.
Yeah.
So there is some mystery down there. And the fact that there are places that Linda Moulton Howe and her whistleblower Brian S. says you're not going to get access to. And if you try to sneak in, you may not come out. So it could be dangerous down there too.
Yeah. Have you met someone that's attempted to remote view that area?
Yes. And this is where we're going with this film project now, Sean, because this is what gives it a lot wider range about what's down there. Because, of course, the polar plateau of Antarctica is 2 miles thick of ice, but it's the most volcanically active continent in the world, 93 known volcanoes.
Whoa.
So you have the propensity to create these large under ice domes. And thus, you'd have a warming, you'd have heating, you'd have energy from geothermal activity. So the remote viewers have been down there and they have identified at least 6 bases.
Damn.
That are the intercorporate conglomerate. So it's kind of like, remember in the movie Avatar when the corporation was exploiting the planet?
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of that.
Holy crap.
Well, they have abilities to leave planet too.
That's insane. So there's people in that area, you think?
Yeah. And this is why it's so top secret. When John Kerry went down there on election day in 2016, all these elite were going down there in this high profile trips. John Kerry, acting Secretary of State, flies a government plane down there to McMurdo, and then they take another plane inland. Nobody knows where they went, but presumably to one of these corporation bases under the ice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What's your theory of what's going on down there?
Yeah, he was getting his marching orders because at that point they knew Trump was going to win or did win. And he was there for the days right after the election when it became crystal clear that Hillary did not win. There's a place down there called Rothschild Island. In fact, Michael Sala told me, I said, Michael, what do you know along the Palmer Peninsula? That was about the one really strange paranormal place where Christine Lagarde and what's his guy from the World Economic Forum?
Soros?
No, the other dude.
I don't know. I try to stay away from that.
Yeah, the Dr. Evil guy.
Oh, Fauci?
No, the other guy. German, Swiss dude, starts with an S. Schultz, no.
I'm not sure. Either way.
Everybody knows who it is. Yeah, the you'll eat nothing or you'll own nothing and like it. And
Yeah. I've seen that quote.
Eatsy Bugs, that dude. It'll come to me in a sec. Anyways, they were going down to Rothschild Island a few years ago. And it also has some weather weapons down there because every once in a while you'll see the frequency waves come shooting out of there. Oh, Klaus Schwab.
Oh, okay.
Of course. That guy. Him and Christine Lagarde from the European Central Bank went down there again, probably to get their marching orders. So your question is, who's the real boss down there? Where it would seem that the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers are the colonels and the captains here, that there's a real general, and that might not even be human.
Which is crazy because everyone put Rothschild at the top of the food chain, but you're saying there's another level.
Yeah.
Even they're being told, and they have all the money in the world and power.
That's right.
But there's levels to the game.
The elite call them the invisible master, that there is a force here on planet Earth of something hybrid perhaps, or otherworldly or interterrestrial, who are really calling the shots.
Yeah.
And that's why we don't have control of the weather weapons either. And we know there's a weather weapon down on Rothschild Island on the Palmer Peninsula.
I could see it. This last hurricane was fishy to me, dude.
Oh, man.
So the way fishy. It formed, and it's never formed from that direction, and it hit Florida hard.
And also the one right before it, Helene, which got over North Carolina. I know a woman who barely survived clinging to trees as her house flooded.
Damn.
I mean, probably lost everything. She said while they were watching it, it changed direction 7 times. That's in the western Appalachia, Tennessee, North Carolina, 7 times. No storm ever does that. But they stalled it out just to drop an enormous payload of water.
Wow.
Which it did.
And I've heard theories that there's lithium in North Carolina.
There is, as well as the quartz crystal that are absolutely necessary for all computers and smartphones.
Wow. So it's just a money play.
Yeah, it was a land grab, just like Lahaina Maui was.
Yeah, Hawaii was raw.
They used the DEW weapons there. So the plan is, the big plan of these globalists, as they take down the U.S., and there's motives for that too, is to burn out the West and flood out the East. In a general geographic schematic.
There's been a lot of fires on the West lately.
Right, because if they got control of the weather, Sean, all our fires out here in the West, why don't they just bring in some weather weapon? I mean, we've been doing this since the Vietnam War. It's called Operation Popeye, which was controlling the weather in Vietnam to flood out the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So we definitely have the technology. The question is, why is it being used on our own people?
Right.
Because you see, if we were to use it against Russia or China, they could retaliate. But when you use it on your own people, there's no repercussion. So once again, who's really calling the shots here on planet Earth?
Crazy.
And they seem to have control of the financial system too.
Oh, for sure. They've had that for a long time, I think.
Yeah.
I've even heard tsunamis they can control.
Yeah, everything.
Which is, holy crap.
Right.
Like, I don't even know what to say about it. They pretty much can do whatever they want to with the weather, it seems like.
In my book, Beyond Esoterica, I have a whole chapter on geoengineering, and the HARP machine is also able to trigger earthquakes.
Whoa.
With a massive earthquake, you can trigger a tsunami. You can make volcanoes go off. You can get the continents to shift. And this is something I'm very concerned about, because Tesla himself said that mankind would become its own worst enemies with this technology that he was discovering. He was a humanitarian. He did not want to give away the death ray, which is now a DEW weapon, and these other Tesla weapons that he knew could work in principle, but he didn't want to release. You know, after he died a pauper, he died poor. He was feeding pigeons on the roof of the New Yorker hotel. There's only one statue of him in the whole country, and that's at Niagara Falls. He was basically written out of our history book, the biggest genius who's ever lived. And when he died, they swarmed his hotel room and took all his papers, still not yet released to the public.
Wow.
Who went through those? But Donald Trump's uncle, John Trump, was the lead scientist to decide which documents could be released to the public and which would be released or kept by basically the weapon manufacturers and try to give us an edge. And as I said, some of those patents have not been released, or Tesla didn't even want to get a patent because he was such a humanitarian. He didn't want to unleash this technology on the world.
Wow.
But play catch up, and we're there. They got it.
They took him out for sure.
Yeah.
He knew a lot. I wonder if Donald knows any of his work, Donald Trump.
Well, that's the whole presumption. If his uncle was working on it when he was a little young man, for sure he would have passed on at least some juicy nuggets of the technology.
Right. I mean, look at him now. He's one of the most successful people, president. Yeah. Maybe there's something there.
I would say he could very well release this in a second term.
That'd be huge. He is going to release a lot of files, he said.
Oh, yeah, even the JFK files.
I mean, we know what happened at that point, but it'd be cool to see him actually release it, right?
Sure would.
That's not a conspiracy anymore.
Not anymore.
It's crazy how 10, 20 years ago, these theories would get you canceled, and now they're actually coming to light.
Yep.
You know? There's a lot of big ones that are about to get exposed.
Oh, this is a wonderful time to be alive, just to watch this all go down.
Yeah. Like, it's great for people like you, because you probably couldn't talk about this stuff years ago, right?
Well, I'm still coming into a lot of this information, too. In my capacity as a researcher, I'm in a very favorable position where people like my work and send me a lot of files. And so now I'm going through a bunch of stuff in Antarctica for my next book, which will be called Antarctica Esoterica. And it'll be a new sub-series of my esoteric series of books. But this new whistleblower I have from Holland who speaks German has been going over a lot of these maps that have uncovered of Antarctica. showing the coordinates to take a U-boat submarine first under the ice, then through an opening, then coming up under the ice in an air bubble, navigating through that, going down again, popping up once again to an air bubble, and navigating to no less than a place called Agartha, an inner Earth civilization.
That'd be nuts.
So my thinking right now is the Nazis were talking about two bases. One was base 211, which I've pinpointed near the Schumacher Ponds in Antarctica. The other one they called New Berlin Base. And this is in the 1940s. They're already discussing two bases, and they're in the middle of World War II. So my theory is that Agartha is the same as the New Berlin Base, which, because Admiral Byrd reported on Nazi symbolism on the Flugelrods that flew him in to a place called the Domain of the Ariani. And that sounds more like the people are the Ariani. The place is Agartha, and the Germans who work there called it New Berlin. So my current theory is they're all one and the same.
Wow. That's crazy. I wonder if General Byrd had any kids you could talk to.
Admiral Byrd did have kids, and one of them died under very mysterious circumstances as he started talking about what his dad told him.
Dang.
Another published the diary, and it's still out there. I've read the whole thing and excerpt from it as well.
Wow, you got to get in touch with that kid.
Yeah, he's hard to find. He's not on the conference circuit. I think he'd be an elderly man now.
He doesn't want to be found.
No. And then do you remember that Admiral Byrd interview for Longinus watches? It was black and white.
I didn't see it.
He died about a year after that.
Whoa.
Yeah, and he was a very healthy man. But there was a gag word. He was never to talk about what he discovered down there. As a military man, you got to follow that.
Damn.
Under threat of imprisonment.
You're in a dangerous space, man.
It's a dangerous space, but so Admiral Byrd in that Longinus interview, he had said something very curious. Like he would speak in code as if he was trying to tell us about the hole in the ice. Because the interviewer asked him, if you were to say to a young American, well, where would you go explore? Byrd said, well, the North Pole is a crowded place now. It's pretty much well explored up there. But if they want to go down to Antarctica and go, this is what he said, beyond the pole, they might find some new things for exploration. Now, we're told, Sean, that the South Pole is one giant slab of ice, the polar plateau. Yep. Nothing to look at, nothing to see. But in that same year that Buzz Aldrin, who tweeted, I've seen the face of evil, we're all in danger, and had to be medevaced out of there, that same year, Prince Harry goes down there with a bunch of his army buddies, and they go cross-country skiing right out of the South Pole for a week. Where are you going to go? Unless they're going to the hole in the ice, unless they had access. And Brian S. said there's a road that corkscrews all the way down into it. He saw it. He flew over it against orders on an emergency medevac.
Whoa.
When he got back, he got pulled into basically the NSA office and read the Riot Act. Said, you don't talk about this. This is what they always say to people who see something that they shouldn't. That they'll say, you didn't see what you just saw, and you shall never talk about it either.
Yeah.
And here, sign this non-disclosure.
I mean, they've done a great job at hiding it for the past, who knows how many years they've been there, right?
It's like hidden in plain sight, though.
Yeah. Could have been hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Who knows?
So Antarctica only got discovered for the first time in 1821.
Wow.
By sealers and whalers who had read the account of Captain Cook sailing around the entire Southern Ocean, but never seeing Antarctica. But he wrote about in his memoirs that were published in the UK how rich the area was in seal and whales. So at the time, if you wanted to have a lantern in your house, you needed seal blubber. That seal blubber makes oil that they would use for their lamps. So it was a very prized possession. That sparked all the merchant marines and other people going down to Antarctica to hunt the seals for the furs and the whales for the blubber. They were the ones who discovered the continent.
Interesting.
But here's what's even more interesting. Not just years or decades, but centuries before that discovery, there are maps showing Antarctica, even all the way back to Ptolemy, who is the first map maker of the whole world. And at the very bottom of the map is a southern continent. So there was a knowledge of this place for quite a long time. And then you have the Piri-Reis map, which is just about 20 years after Columbus. And it also shows the coastline of Antarctica, including where some of these ice shelves are. The Fitchner ice shelf, which is completely covered in ice, but on the Piri-Reis map shows island groups below that ice shelf.
Whoa.
Which people have used scanners and actually found them.
Crazy.
So there are lands that literally have never been seen before. These islands, if Antarctica ice were to melt or there was another pole shift, it position out and everything melts. We got a brand new continent nobody's familiar with.
Damn, it's that big.
It's huge. It's the 5th largest continent in the world.
Holy crap.
Bigger than Australia, bigger than Europe.
So it's like it got rediscovered in 1821, but it was already known.
Well, it was known by these map makers, but a lot of these maps, including the Piri-Reis map, says that they're drawn from other source maps. So back in the age of exploration, if you were a pirate or you were to take over a Spanish galleon like Sir Francis Drake did, first thing you would do is go to the captain's quarters and get into their lockbox and steal their maps. To them, it was worth more than gold.
Really?
Of course, they'd take everything they could get, but the very first thing they wanted, if they had to get out of there quick, was steal the maps. And then those maps could be reproduced by other cartographers. And so then you see this continent of Antarctica keep popping up all over the place in these early maps of the age of exploration.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
That's super interesting. I had no idea. You've also looked into the triangles.
Yeah.
So what do you think's going on there? Do you think that's man-made, what they're doing with the weather?
It would seem it's a combination of two things. And it's interesting you bring that up because there's a Nevada triangle. And right after this interview, I'm meeting up with some fellow researchers who we like to go to these places and do an investigation. I've been to Skinwalker Ranch outside of it. A friend owns the land adjacent half a dozen times. Bradshaw Ranch near Sedona. And now this one is called Mount Wilson, 2.5 miles or hours drive due north. And it was owned by Bigelow right before he bought Skinwalker Ranch.
Whoa.
And so it might be on equal par. So there's a couple things here, Sean, and I'm very interested in this subject because it seems that these paranormal hotspots, the veil gets thinner and let's say the density between dimensions becomes slimmer. So you may be able to see things manifest through. But you mentioned technology, and I don't think we can discount that either, because it said that in the Bermuda Triangle, what is creating the disruption and a tear in space and time is actually an Atlantean fire crystal that has never been extinguished, that it's still running on this kind of free energy power and creating this ripple in space and time. And that's why planes go missing and then pop back out, ships too. That's the most known one. But here in our Nevada Triangle, which you're in as well, and my ranch up near Reno, Nevada is in the triangle, and then it goes to Fresno, California. So all along the central and southern Sierras, and then out here to the Nellis Air Force Range, including Area 51 and S4, is the Nevada Triangle, which George Knapp on KLAS did a whole segment about all these missing planes. And it was on a plane that had gone missing that they did the report, and then looking into it, there are the dozens of planes that have just gone missing. Damn. Some have been recovered as crashes, others never found.
Wow, in Nevada.
Right here.
Had no idea.
Yeah. So at the conference I just spoke at, there was a speaker who spoke on it, and he and I had a one-on-one, and we looked at it a little closer, and he was showing me all the data points where the planes went down.
Damn. Was there any patterns with that?
Yeah, pretty much right along the eastern side of the Sierras as it transitions over to Nellis, which is basically the base that Area 51 and S4 are in. Up north is the Tonopah bombing range where weird stuff has happened. But Nellis is so huge, it's about the size of the state of Connecticut. And it's run out of Edwards Air Force Base in California.
Damn.
And Air Force, I hate to say it, but I think it's a captured operation, Sean.
Really?
Because you see the chemtrails. They're spraying us right now today. Air Force doesn't do anything about it. In fact, they help facilitate it, and those planes come out of Air Force bases.
They're paying people to do it now.
Oh, yeah, or they can get drones to fly those planes, too.
Yeah, I remember growing up when
hard.
chemtrails was a conspiracy theory.
Not anymore.
Now they're just doing it.
Now they're just doing it, but there's also news stories coming out, too. And then all these people that poo-pooed it all this time. Well, they're just spraying iodine and cloud seeding. All right, well, put out the fires in California then with that technology.
It's for real. What do you think's in these chemtrails? What do you think they're doing?
Well, it's aluminum, barium, strontium, but I've talked to Dane Wigington from Geoengineering Watch on the phone, and as I mentioned, I did a chapter on geoengineering and Beyond Esoteric book. And Dane lives up in Shasta County near the mountain, and he's been doing water tests at the snow level at high elevation. Even at the summit of Mount Shasta, they're finding particulate aluminum in the snow samples.
Damn.
Now, particulate aluminum never appeared anywhere on planet Earth in that form, especially not at the top of a mountain. So they're definitely spraying particle aluminum. And where does that come from? Because there's obviously a huge amount of substance. You can watch these chemtrails turn into these milky white clouds over the course of a day. They are getting the extract from coal burning plants. This came out about 20 years ago where they were following the trains coming in with the coal out of a plant with the tailings, which is very difficult to get rid of and expensive. But then all of a sudden the government said, hey, we got a use for that. We'll put them in these tanker planes and spray them out. In the military, they call it spraying chaff. And there's this famous weatherman from Southern Oregon doing a weathercast. I'm sure he was a one and done after this because he says, oh, I know what those are. He's showing the chemtrails on the radar. He says, that's spraying chaff. We used to do that in the military all the time, and that's to give cover to our troops if we are in some kind of situation. So, of course, the military has been geoengineering for decades.
Damn.
As I mentioned, Popeye in the Vietnam War and other programs that are now about a century old. In fact, there was a really interesting documentary about controlling the weather by Disney Educational Films from 1959.
Wow.
And they're recreating in the weather control room. And we see this hurricane heading right for Florida. He's going right to Billy Carson's house. So let's create a big high pressure bubble and steer it off gently into the Atlantic where it hurts no one. So we have that technology, Sean, but why are these mega storms just hitting us? It doesn't have to be that way.
Wow. They had that in 59?
59, that
it's like 70 years ago.
Disney Educational Film came out. Yeah, 70 years ago.
Disney's got a lot of power.
They do have a lot of power. They might even have a heart machine underground at Disney.
Really?
Because until this last Milton storm, that maybe the White Hats have some kind of control over tampering it down. So it was going to hit as a 5. As you mentioned, never seen a storm like that form in the Gulf of Mexico. And by the way, there was the signature NEXRAD frequency weapon that was used when Milton was coming down to the Yucatan Peninsula. You see this big concentric circle. Nature doesn't create that. Humans create that. And it bounced it straight up to Florida.
Wow.
So they're actively doing it. And as you said, I don't even think they care anymore.
Definitely not.
Yeah, just like Lahaina, they're totally busted using the DEW weapons to light those fires and burning people out. And that, too, was a land grab.
Yeah. Dude, I woke up like one of these days, like 2 months ago, and the fire smoke reached Vegas from Cali.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like I was inhaling it.
Ugh.
It's getting bad, man.
It is getting bad. Well, like I said, the plan is to burn out the West and flood the East.
Yeah. I wouldn't feel safe in Cali right now, living there, to be honest.
No, that's why I left.
Yeah. Oh, you were from there?
I lived in the Bay Area for almost 30 years.
That place has gone to
I know.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Why I fled California.
Man. When it comes to aliens, what's been your experience and research on that?
So, as you know, I go to these paranormal hotspots. I love this subject. I've been studying it. Very, very much interested in this subject since I was a kid. I have seen phenomenon at Crater Lake, Mount Shasta, and Mount Adams. And the commonality is they're all volcanoes in the Cascade Range. Lights that flare up that have something to do with human consciousness. When I was at the ESETI Ranch, James Gilliland would point a laser and we'd all focus on it. And he'd say, fire up, fire up. And the thing, when we're all paying attention to it, would light up and then come back down. And then it would go right into the mountain.
Wow.
Like anything ever does that. Coming and going out of Mount Adams all night. In the next night, I saw more UFOs per minute than I've ever seen. But I've also used night vision goggles in Sedona. And I have a couple friends that run UFO night watch tours. Mm-hmm. And both of their motto is, if you don't see anything, your money back. They see something every night and they've never given the money back.
Holy crap.
Because everybody comes away saying, whoa, we saw something. That was incredible.
That's crazy. So they're that common.
There's a lot of activity up there right now. Now, when we were in Miami on the White cruise, remember it was pouring rain at the end there? So I was just one-on-one with Dr. Stephen Greer for a while. And I've met him before and he knew me and we got to talking. I asked him, Dr. Greer, what would you say of the percentage of sightings of UFOs worldwide are ours or theirs? He said 80% ours, 20% theirs. So only 20% are alien species. That we've gotten to the point of backward engineering this tech that it's commonplace for, see, the triangle craft or even disc-shaped craft that are manufactured by humans.
Interesting. Yeah, I remember I saw Starlink once and I thought it was a UFO. I was freaking out.
A whole bunch of them coming over.
I was in the hot tub. But yeah, it's probably human error for sure. But there are some real sightings, I feel like.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think they're physical beings or light beings?
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's probably a combination of all the above. I would often say in my interviews, we've been programmed to say, oh, look to the stars. They're extraterrestrials coming down, extra planet terrestrials from another world. What about interterrestrials right below our feet? What about ultra-terrestrials that are able to phase through the wall that aren't quite in a physical form as we are?
Right. Bigfoot, right? Shapeshifter.
That's pretty good case for Bigfoot being an ultra-terrestrial.
Yeah. Skinwalker Ranch, right?
Yeah, has been seen there.
You said you went there a few times?
Yep.
You see anything interesting there?
I have. The very first time I went, I was alone, didn't have really a good camera, just my cell. But my friend who has the Space Wolf Research property right adjacent to and overlooking the Skinwalker had a camper van out there and he let me use it. And I tried to stay up as late as I could. And at one point I woke up and did sort of my look over the valley down there and I saw these two orange lights. So what the heck? Couldn't tell really if it was machine or something, but it was way out in the meadow. And then they just slowly rocked back and forth and just watched them for as long as I could. I think I was up for about an hour and they were just doing that. And then I fell back to sleep. Next time I woke up, they weren't there. Didn't see anything out there in the morning. But this is interesting, Sean. The very next night, I was there again. And then the people from the ranch came out in their trucks with the big high beam lights. And so they were looking for something where those orange lights were.
Yeah.
So someone else knew they were out. Something was out there too. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's all I saw at Skinwalker.
Wonder what that was.
Don't know. I mean, it's these balls of light of various colors, but my researcher friend, Ryan Burns, who works at the Space Wolf Research, when he got the property, I asked him within a year, I said, Ryan, how much have you guys seen? Have you documented stuff? He says, way more than we ever thought. It's a pretty regular phenomenon.
Damn.
Because again, he also believes the veil is very thin at these paranormal hotspots.
Yeah. That
somehow allows entities come in and out, whether it's a portal or
Stargate, they call them, right?
Or a Stargate.
Yeah, I don't know if
Stargate.
I'm so evidence-based. Like, what's your opinion on that stuff? Like the Stargates, the portals?
Well, they found them in antiquity. They found Stargates in Egypt. I've got a picture of one in Beyond Esoteric in 1891, I think. Just in one of the big temples there, digging around and found this big round thing with this symbolism on it, these triangles, just like the movie. They copied it out of there. But the most famous one was in Iraq. And I confirmed this story with Michael Jaco, who was a Navy SEAL. I publish his books at cccpublishing.com. And remember in the Second Gulf War when the troops got to Baghdad and they actually entered the city this time, the first thing they did was went to the Museum of Antiquities. And I had heard this story through the grapevine before, and I confirmed it with Jaco. Why was the museum the number one target? Why was it the first place? You'd think they'd go for military bases or radio stations or directly to Saddam's palace. But no, they go to the museum. And he told me what I heard confirmed is that they had a Stargate there. They had a Stargate, which is very old, way back to Mesopotamia, Sumerian culture, in a cave. And the cave had an entrance that came out in the basement of the museum. And then the museum was just put on top kind of as a cover.
Wow.
So they wanted to get the Stargate. Why? Because Saddam had started succeeding in using it to either transport people back or forth to affect the timeline or to be able to see what might be coming.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's why they took him out.
That's why they took him out.
Damn.
That's why they had to get rid of Saddam.
They painted him as a terrorist, but he was
Of course. And there were no weapons of mass destruction.
Oh,
That's
hell
already
no.
been established. That
They
was all
programmed
fake
that in me
news.
as a kid, though, for sure. I believed it.
Of course. Yeah.
I remember watching the news every day, like, oh, I hope they get those terrorists.
Yeah.
Such a brainwashed person at the time, you know?
Yeah.
But a lot of people live like that.
Oh, that's what we didn't have alternative media back then. So
Right.
you didn't have the digital social hour to deconstruct these kind of narratives.
Yeah, that was pre-Rogan, too. I think he was
was.
just starting.
Yep.
So guys like him really changed the game.
Yeah. In fact, I saw the solar eclipse last April just a mile away from where Joe Rogan lives.
Wow.
In West Austin, Texas. I was there for a conference, but the conference was just out of the range, and we were invited to these mansions that live in this neighborhood where Joe Rogan lives. And then the next day I saw Joe Rogan post a picture and was like, yeah, that's exactly the eclipse we saw a mile away.
Were you meditating during that eclipse?
It was kind of, yeah. It was just sort of a social party scene. Everybody had the glasses on, and
Yeah.
I was just laying there. But yeah, I was trancing out. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, those don't happen often, right?
No, they don't.
I got to see one. Hopefully there's some more in my lifetime.
Yeah, they just had one in South America, was it? In Easter Island?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Have you been out there yet?
I have not been to Easter Island. That's
Ever
on my
since I was a
bucket
kid,
list.
I was fascinated with that place for some
Yeah.
reason.
Well,
I think there's a
should
lot
be.
of I think there's a lot of lies they're telling about it.
Yeah. Yeah, they've even find the Moai underwater, too.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Big statuary.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't know.
working on a book called Underwater Archaeology, and I got a picture of a scuba diver finding a
Really?
Moai statue.
'Cause those are
Yeah,
heavy.
Of course. Oh, they're huge.
So how would it get there?
Tidal wave? Tsunami?
Yeah.
Thrown over? I don't know.
And we couldn't make those right now, like, and they have thousands of them,
No.
right?
And they have a whole body below the head. We
Oh, they
just see
do?
the head. Oh, yeah. Well, they don't have legs, but they got the arms in a relief form like this. And then they're wearing sort of a jock strap with a ring in the back. And then there's hieroglyphic letters. Now, they found a whole text on Easter Island, Roronuki text, I think it's called, but it almost exactly matches the text of ancient Sumeria.
Whoa.
Yeah. So again, a case for planetary civilization as well as transocean traffic.
Yeah, because they were able to communicate back then through the Stargates, probably.
They were using that technology, or perhaps Vimana craft, as they talked about in the Mahabharata, the ancient Indian texts. They had flying craft back in that day.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Back all the way.
Yeah, it's one of the oldest texts of India describes these Vimana craft. And India is right next to Pakistan, where the same script was found. The Indus culture is like Sumeria or Egypt as one of these high cultures of ancient times.
Dang. Do you think we'll ever access that advanced technology?
Well, I think we already are.
You think it's already?
Oh, and we already have the Stargate technology. But the question is it in the wrong hands? 'Cause it's certainly not like the weather weapons, not being used for the benefit of the people, but to harm.
Right.
and that's the takedown of America, which is the attempted goal of the globalists. We are the most well-armed citizenry on the planet, and we have a very solid Constitution and Bill of Rights that grants us inalienable rights,
Right.
unlike other people of the world. So if America goes down, there's no country that can stand up to this cabal, because now they have the high-tech weaponry as well as the financial side of things to truly control the human race.
Wow. Well, every superpower seems to fall at some point when you study history, right?
There are so many, I like the quote, history doesn't repeat, history rhymes. And there's so many historical rhymes with the fall of Rome, including when they are just so in your face with FEMA and giving people who lose their home in Lahaina $750. Oh, you lost your home in North Carolina, Sean? Here's $750 from FEMA. While they're giving migrants $2,225 on debit cards.
Yep.
That is such a slap in the face to Americans. And the purpose is to demoralize the citizenry. And they did this in ancient Rome. And the Emperor Caligula made one of his horses a senator just to demoralize the Senate. Say, you can't mess with my power. So history rhymes. And here we're seeing it all over again.
Damn, that's scary. Yeah, these globalists. So does that mean we're not part of that, the U.S.? They're a separate entity?
Yeah, they're NGOs or non-governmental organizations. They're the Davos Group. They're the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission. These globalist think tank groups are sort of the outward form. But again, maybe these are just the colonels and captains who we can put a name and a face to, that the real pullers of the string that are calling the shots are nameless, faceless, and maybe not even human.
Yeah, there's levels to the game.
That's the Earth dilemma that we find ourselves in. We don't even really know who's calling the shots here.
Which is scary.
Very scary.
When you can't put a face to it, it's like you go crazy, right?
There's no democracy anymore. There's no republic. There's no nothing. We're just stuck here on Prison Planet.
Yeah. But we need people like you actually going to these sites and learning and exploring and sharing it with everyone.
Well, I'm happy to do that, Sean. And thanks so much for having me on Digital Social Hour. I think we covered a lot of cool subjects.
Absolutely, man. What are you working on next, or where can people find you?
Well, my website for my conference schedule and projects I'm working on is bradolsen.com, just like my name. And my book publishing website with all of my books on it, Michael Jaco, Leo Lyons-Zagami, Laura Eisenhower's new book is through cccpublishing.com.
Perfect.
So people go to that website, CCC Publishing, they can get a signed copy from me, and those go out of my warehouse.
Perfect. We'll link it below. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, you bet.
Yep. Thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah.
See you next time. Peace.
Peace out.